everyone. So I've been using iPhone 12 for almost a month, and I could have done this review earlier, but I didn't want to rush. See, it's easier for me to review an Android phone because the underlying platform is same, but this is different. I'm not going to talk about the specs because I think that's the last thing that matters when it comes to Apple devices. I mean, all the speed tests and benchmarks aside, people usually buy iPhones because of their simplicity and ecosystem. And the reason people don't buy these phones because they think it's boring, especially Android users, and they're expensive. I mean, face it, there are a lot of people who wants to purchase an iPhone but they can't, but they really want to use it. And there are a lot of people who do not buy iPhones because they think the value they're getting out of their money is not enough. I was one of them. I mean, take an example for the first iPhone that came with Super AMOLED, the iPhone 10, and it was almost around 90,000 rupees in India. Why would you buy a phone when you can get a Samsung S8 with same display, expandable storage just for half the price? But things started to change after some years. Like for Samsung, the cheapest flagship phone they launched this year was $1,000. Also this year, OnePlus launched a flagship phone, OnePlus 8 Pro, and that was also $900. And let's keep the Indian pricing aside because that is something we can't do anything about. And let's talk about all around the world. So if I talk about iPhones, the Pro series is almost at the same price as last year. They're still expensive, I get it, but so are other flagship at this point. Let's say all the flagship are expensive, but I think that's where iPhone 12 and 12 mini comes in the picture. Apple changed everything with iPhone 12 and iPhone 12 mini, and it's also opened a way for Android flagship users to try iPhone for a cheaper price. So what it has to do with iPhone 12 review? See, I wanted to clear one thing before going forward, that iPhones are not the only expensive phones right now. And I want to quote one thing which I found in a tweet: expensive does not mean it's overpriced, bad value is. And if we talk about the Indian pricing now, it is what it is, and you can't do anything about it. And it has more to do with our government than Apple. See, OnePlus is also cheaper in India, but it is expensive in US and UK, and they are also dealing with it, so I think we should too. And if you can import your phone from outside like US or Dubai, good for you. So all I'm planning to do is talk about my experience with this phone as an Android user or just as a smartphone user. This phone has made me feel really old. Why? I'll come to that. I talked about the build in my first iPhone video, so I'll keep it short. It's amazing. The flat design makes it feel really great in the hand, unlike any other phone out there. I love how light it feels and the premium feel I get from this build. Yes, I would love to have a matte finish like iPhone 12 Pro so that I don't have to worry about the scratches and the fingerprints, but this makes it less slippery. Also, the aluminum frame is great and I like it not being shiny. The phone did get some scratches on the back which you really can't see unless you're in a direct sunlight because I was using this phone without any case. But overall it held up pretty well. I also dropped this phone once but it survived, so I put the case after that. Rest you all know about the ceramic shield on the front, Gorilla Glass on the back, blah blah. I do want to talk about the display in detail though because of two reasons. One, because it's a great display, and second, a lot of people are having some issues with the display. I don't know how many of you know that Apple is using the display from different manufacturers, LG, Samsung and BOE. So some of the displays are facing the green tint issue. There is also another issue that is going with the display calibration, where you will find the screen a little bit yellowish even if you turn off the night mode or the true tone display. The latter can be calibrated manually or can be fixed via software update, but about the green tint issue, Apple is looking into it. So either they're going to fix it by software update or they might replace your phones. So I would suggest purchasing this phone offline if possible. But my device does not have any of those issues, and also a lot of friends who are using iPhone 12 are not seeing anything like this. So it's not as widespread. And if I talk about the display itself, I think the display was the main reason I didn't purchase iPhone 11, and display is the main reason I purchased the iPhone 12. The iPhone 12 series has the same display in all the iPhones, so if you're just planning to buy an iPhone just because of the display, avoid the Pro and just get this one. It's a beautiful and bright display, the contrast is good. I know it's not as vivid as Samsung display, but the color calibration is so good. It is a 10-bit display after all. Also, it is Dolby Vision certified, so watching high dynamic range content is also a treat. I have zero complaints when it comes to display, apart from that notch. It didn't bother me as much as I was thinking. In fact, I barely notice it unless I'm watching a content on full screen view and that notch cuts some part of it. Otherwise, display always makes up for it. Okay, fine, I know what you want me to talk about. The high refresh rate display, right? Because I did bring Samsung S20 series and OnePlus 8 Pro. See, high refresh displays are great and I'm not denying. And if you use them side by side, you might see a difference. But I think there are a lot of problems with high refresh rate displays right now. With Samsung, they cannot use it with full resolution and the battery life just sucks. With OnePlus 8 Pro, they are having display issues with the green tint and the lower brightness, black crush, a lot of that. I think the only phone that nailed it with display with 120Hz refresh rate and Quad HD resolution was Oppo Find X2 Pro. But we're still talking about a $1,300 phone here. Also, the animations on iPhones are slow. I mean really slow when it comes to Android. And I'm only talking about a 60Hz refresh rate on an Android phone with animation reduced to 0.5x. But I think that's the reason they are able to maintain that smooth display on 60Hz refresh rate. The display, I think you'll be fine, don't worry. Okay, before talking about anything else, I just want to stop here and appreciate the haptics on this phone. I know how people always say that iPhone's haptics are great. I never used it before, but now that I've used it, I think they were right. I do think the motor on the new Android flagships are also great, but the haptic feedback you get from this phone is just on a different level. The only other phone I saw same sort of feedback is from Pixel phone, but the haptic motor on Pixel was not very good. So either you will get a great haptic motor or great experience and feedback from Android phones. But iPhone nails in both of them, and I would love to see that in Android next year as well. There's one thing that is pointless to talk about right now, and that is performance. A14, A13 and even A12 flies through everything right now. There's no lag, no hiccups, no thermal throttling. And if a company makes hardware and software, it's a no-brainer. So the performance on this device is great. It's powerful, snappy, smooth, and it always works. So the performance is the last thing you need to worry about. And if I talk about the gaming, it's also iPhone's forte, so don't need to worry about that. Everything runs smooth. So let's just move on because it's going to be boring to talk about it. Let's talk about the cameras. I think that is going to be more interesting. And if you're still with me, please click on that red button, please. So iPhone's cameras, they're good. I'm not going to say they're the best I've used because sometimes I like the oversaturated and overexposed look of Samsung, and sometimes I like the over-contrasty look of Pixel. Overall, it was a good experience, but they're not the best cameras I've used when it comes to photos. I do want to say one thing, that I miss a telephoto camera on this phone. I never used it on my Galaxy phone. I didn't care about that on my Pixel phone, but the reason I miss a telephoto camera here because I think the main sensor is just way too wide for my liking. Although the camera processing makes it look much better after, but I still feel like going closer to the subject every time I look into the viewfinder. I love the details on this camera and they do not look over sharpened like Samsung phone, but I think Note 20 Ultra's 108 megapixel camera will be much better in details. When it comes to portrait, I do miss the zoom option like the Pixel phone, which you can't do this here, but otherwise the edge detection is great in the daytime at least. The night mode is also good. I mean, it's not exceptional that made me click more photos, but otherwise the camera performance is okay. And the fact now you can click night mode photos from the wide angle camera and the front camera as well. The wide camera is great and it's pretty consistent with the main camera, so that's the one thing I really liked about it. What I really loved about this camera is the video quality, and I agree, it's the best video camera out there, period. The quality, the stabilization and the colors are amazing, and the addition of 10-bit Dolby HDR recording taking it ahead of the competition. I know it's not for everyone, but when you want to work with more colors and grade your videos, it does come handy. Although keep one thing in mind, you can only record 10-bit HDR Dolby Vision at 30 frames per second on iPhone 12, and if the frame rate is set to 60 frames per second, you cannot record an HDR video. You have to manually set it to 30 frames per second. Do I wish iPhone has a Dolby Vision recording at 60 frames per second? Definitely. But will I pay extra for 12 Pro just for that? No, at least not in India. I want to come to the problems with this phone, but there's only one thing that I want to talk about that just not only surprised me but made me stick with this iPhone. And yes, I'm not talking about the ecosystem. I can easily switch to an Android phone without even thinking about it. I'm talking about the battery. I mean, I could not believe that this compact phone can give me such an amazing battery life. I'm not saying it's the best in the market, definitely not, but when it comes to a compact phone, I think this is the best battery phone you can get out there. I'm a moderate user, so I do not use any heavy apps or games, but most of the battery used by social media or video calling. So I was getting around 9 hours to 10 hours of screen on time, which is just insane for me. I was never able to kill this phone in just one day. I do hate the lightning port, but at this point I don't really care about it. I charge my phone overnight with the optimized battery charging enabled. So what it does is it slow down the charging when I'm sleeping, and it will resume the charging when I'm about to wake up. The standby on this phone is also amazing, and yes, I was on Wi-Fi all the time, so I wanted to try the 4G as well. So what I did is I charged my phone fully at around 5 p.m. and I used this phone on 4G for the whole day. and the next day around 6 p.m. it was still on 26% and I had 6 hours of screen on time, and that was just amazing for my kind of use. So I think this is the most reliable battery for me. Now let's talk about the software, and I think my love ends here. Do I prefer iOS over Android? No, definitely not. But do I hate it? No, not really. So it has been a smooth ride for me so far, and I didn't miss Android as much as I think I would. So it has been okay for me. I don't have any complaint with it, but yes, I don't love it. It took me some time to get used to it, and there's only one thing that I'm still not used to, and that is going back. And I really hate that about iOS. It still feels awkward, and the swipe from the left isn't really smooth in every application. Yes, one swipe gesture work, but it's a lot of work for a lazy person like me. I know the gestures were basically copied from Apple, but I think Android is doing a better job. And the fact you can also disable them and use a normal back or home button, which works perfectly for my parents, I think Apple should work on their gestures. With the iOS 14, you can only change 3 default applications: Maps, Browser, and Email, but you cannot change the Messages app. I mean, Messages app is good for iMessages, I get it, but other than that, it's just a very basic application. I know with iOS 14 you get the SMS filtering, and you can also use a Truecaller SMS filtering if you want, but you cannot disable all the promotion messages if you want. You have to do it manually, and it will still show you in the icon. So I really miss the SMS organizer made by Microsoft, and you cannot use it here. One thing I really want to know about but I couldn't find, and any iPhone user can help me, is there any way to auto unlock the phone in certain situations? Like in Android you have trusted devices, in Samsung you can set a Bixby routine when you're connected to a Bluetooth. So I really want to auto unlock my phone when I'm in the car, because right now with Face ID and wearing the mask, it's very hard to unlock a phone when you're driving. Which brings me to Face ID. It works great, but not in the current situation, and I really miss the physical fingerprint sensor on my Pixel's phone. And one more thing that I think has been improved a lot on iOS, but it's still not as great as Android, and that is notifications. I do miss some notification here and there, because there are a lot of applications that I want to deliver quietly. There are times when you just want to see some notification of particular app, but you do not want them to alert you. If you turn them on to deliver quietly, you won't be able to see it directly. You have to swipe up in the notification panel to see if there is any notification like that or not. Rest I already talked about that in my first video, so you can go check that out. I really like the shortcut application on iPhone, and the fact you can customize your icons for opening the app is also great. But I'm waiting for an update which does not bring you to the shortcut app before opening any app. But I really like the app drawer and widget implementation. I think they're not as flexible as Android, but they are much more polished than Android. So now let's talk about why this phone made me feel really old. It's a very reliable phone, and despite its flaws and all the irritating points, I still want to use this as my primary device. I really don't want any fancy customization anymore, and I'm just okay with changing wallpapers. But the fact I can just rely on this phone and nothing else matters make me feel really old. Okay, this was a long video, and if you're still with me, I can't thank you enough. Do share this video if you can relate with the experience, and do share your happy or angry thoughts with me if you want. I'd appreciate if you subscribe to my channel and watch my upcoming videos, but even if you don't, it was really nice having you today. My name is Rohit. I would love to see you in the next one. Till then,